and thank you all for joining us this morning in what promises to be an engaging webinar titled Driving Content Growth in West Africa. My name is Ayemide Jones, Head of Product Management at MainOne, an Equinix company, and I'll be your anchor for the day. I'm joining you live from Lagos, Nigeria. We're very much interested in our audience, our participants, so could you kindly drop your name and where you're joining us from? And I'll be sure to say hello to you. Okay, before I'm getting some names coming through, but first to some housekeeping rules. Today's session is planned for 1 hour. It will commence with a keynote speech, followed by an engaging panel session, and we should be done within the hour, so by 12 o'clock West African time. As this is a webinar, you will have the chat and Q&A box available for you. Let's have the chat open for just engaging in the conversation, and the Q&A will be for the panel session only. We have a huge, amazing lineup of panelists, so if you have questions for a panelist in particular, please be sure to include their name in the panel question. Okay, if you have any more inquiries, you can send them to AMS-IX Lagos at mdxi.net, which should be in the chat box. I can see Ben from UK, Angie from Germany, Osmain, sorry if I pronounced that name wrong, from Ghana, hello. Richmond from Ghana, Hitchman from Mali, fantastic. Dominique from the Netherlands, fantastic. Once again, hello and welcome to all our participants from around the world. Today's exciting webinar is brought to you in collaboration between Main Data Exchange Data Centers, otherwise known as MDXI, and Amsterdam Internet Exchange, otherwise known as AMS-IX. MDXI is an Equinix company with a growing ecosystem of data centers. We currently have data centers in West Africa, actually. We currently have data centers in Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire. AMS-IX is one of the largest hubs of internet traffic in the world. It was established in the 1990s in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. It operates from 16 POPs with 873 networks, pushing a total peak traffic of 11.76 terabytes of traffic. MDXI and AMS-IX went into partnership in August 2022, and it was announced at the 2022 edition of African Peering and Interconnection Forum, otherwise known as AFPIF, which was held in Rwanda. The 2023 edition of AFPIF would hold in Ghana and is proudly hosted by MainOne, an Equinix company. We look forward to seeing you all virtually or in person in Ghana. To register and for more information, please use the link that has just been dropped in the chat box. Following the collaboration announcement, AMS-IX Lagos was launched in Q2 of 2023, more precisely April 2023. It currently boasts 26 peers and many new networks connecting every week. This also includes unique West African peers. Now, to the crux of the matter, West Africa. According to United Nations, Africa has the youngest and second largest population in the world. West Africa's population accounts for 30% of the African population. This represents opportunities as well as some challenges. Opportunities because this young population represents eyeballs who are tech savvy and they're digitally engaged. This demographic is actively creating and consuming digital content, driving demand for diverse and relevant content. There are some challenges because a gap in access to content still exists. AMS-IX Lagos was birthed to bridge this divide, connecting eyeballs to content across West Africa by MDXI's rich ecosystem, which is carrier neutral. Now, we're going to look and dive deeper into the key enablers for content growth in West Africa. We're going to look at the role digital infrastructure such as AMS-IX and MDXI play in bridging this digital divide. So coming up next is our keynote speech by Wouter Ensing. He has a keynote speech titled AMS-IX Lagos, a content hub and cooperative models. Wouter Ensing is an experienced business development manager at AMS-IX and regional director for the African continent. Wouter has a long history working in the IT and services industry and is a strong believer in driving and maintaining long-lasting relationships. Good morning. Hello, Wouter. Can you hear me?
Hey, good morning, Ayamida. Yeah, I can hear you well. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Good to have you here. Over to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again. Welcome to everyone. The majority probably in the morning if you're in Africa, but if you're in other parts of the world, perhaps afternoon, evening, welcome. Today we'll be talking about driving content into Africa and specifically West Africa, and we've got some slides on that and how we believe that from our perspective in Amsterdam Internet Exchange we can add value to that process. So looking at our mission as a company, we're trying to contribute to a better society by creating a better internet. The internet has brought us a lot of good things, but also some not so good things, and we believe it's our responsibility to try and work on that as a company, and with that help society. So if we look at the content, if we look at content in general, if we look at the evolution of content in general throughout the internet, we can see it kind of moves through 4 phases. Content gets deployed typically somewhere in the world. Someone invents an application or a game, etc. And it's global deployment or global delivery from a central location. In the next phase, and we've seen quite a few content providers do that in Africa. It moves into the continent, and typically in Africa, the logical place for content to move was South Africa. Not because it's necessarily the biggest country, but it's probably, on the one hand, one of the most stable and predictable economies, as well as it's the furthest away. Hence, it has the biggest effect. So kind of what we saw was that the north of Africa was surfaced from Europe and possibly the US, and the sub-Saharan part of Africa was typically surfaced from content which is stored in South Africa. Now, recently, we've seen the move that content providers are moving to kind of regional setup. With deployments in East Africa, which is typically Kenya, either Nairobi or Mombasa, and on the west side, it's typically Nigeria. Nigeria is by far the biggest country in terms of population, also in terms of economy. So it kind of makes sense. And the next phase is very likely to be that all the content is going to be deployed locally in markets, and in markets that could be in country, but in markets that could also be in specific parts of a country. And when we look at the US and Europe, we're even talking edge deployments, which kind of means on city level. But we've got a long way to go in Africa, and a lot of things to achieve still before we're there. So if we look at Africa and again specifically West Africa, although some of the larger content providers have moved into the continent, there's still a general lack of content physically in the region, and not having content in region and therefore consuming it remotely, and remotely could be 5,000 to 10,000 kilometers away. It creates unnecessary cost, it creates latency, but it also creates a slowdown of the total local development of the internet. So it's extremely important to get content into the region, get it deployed locally. And from our perspective in AMS-IX, we believe we can add value to that process, utilizing our global relationships, our brand, and our experience to help to bring content into the region. Now, if we look at what's required on accelerating that development, we believe there's a couple of elements which are truly important. Now, in order to attract content into the region, we need to be able to provide them reach. content providers typically are looking for eyeballs, for users. So by being able to provide reach, we will attract content providers. By having content providers, we will get eyeballs again. So first of all, extending that reach by creating a network that provides scale through carriers, through collaborative internet exchanges, data centers. We will reach more ISPs. With that, we can aggregate the demand in the whole region, which makes it easier to attract the content. And once the content is there, it drives the adoption of more ISPs, and we get this vicious circle rolling in the right direction. So what would that look like? What we're trying to do as AMS-IX is create and what we call a regional content hub, which means we're trying to attract that content to the region, but we're also trying to make that content available in the region. So we're also trying to see if we can surface or serve local networks in the neighboring countries in cooperation with both carriers, but also with affiliated or federated or partnered internet exchanges. And by creating that network, which covers essentially a larger region just than a country, we can offer an efficient platform for the content providers and therefore accelerating their landing. Over time, they will go to a country-based service. So landing in Nigeria first and then moving to Ghana, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, etc. makes perfect sense. But the first step needs to be efficient, and that's really what we're trying to build, an efficient platform for those content providers to land in the region and from there grow into countries. So really, we're looking for companies, partners who support this idea, who support this philosophy, who have a good reputation as well, and can add value to this process and this goal. So this is what it more or less should look like. Different countries, all or different regions, all connected to a local or a central content hub. And this is not meant as a hierarchical setup. Let me be very clear about this. This is meant as a cooperative business model, and this is also how we approach the world, how we look at the world. As AMS-IX, and we've been kind of vocal about it, we are not looking to deploy 15 internet exchanges across West Africa ourselves. There is no point in us doing that. There are local companies, there are local initiatives which work really, really well, but may not have the scale, or may not have the scale today to serve the region or to attract international content. So that's where we can add value. That's where we can support. That's where our knowledge and experience and our relationships come in. But we're not looking to deploy in each and every country ourselves, because we'd rather work with local partners that can help, that A, understand the market much better, and B, that will help us drive the development of the region. And that goes back to our mission, creating a better society by creating, or contributing to a better society by creating a better internet. But that also means driving local development rather than doing it ourselves. And this is where our cooperative approach versus a competitive approach comes in. And we honestly believe in that way of doing business. So what that looks like from a regional hub perspective, there's essentially, on the one hand, there's the content providers. We can see them on the top in this picture. Then there's the regional internet exchange, in this case, AMS-IX. And then we have three routes to market. The local market, the direct market. So we're looking for local partners. Well, as Ayamide mentioned, we've been deploying with MDXI. We announced our partnership in April or in August last year, and physically deployed in April. Went open for business in May, and we're adding customers since new customers since June. This partnership is working really well at the moment. MDXI is our launching partner in Nigeria. That doesn't mean we're exclusive, nor are they, but this is our launching partner, and we're doing really well. With that, we have some regional carriers. We have a few that were already connected to MDXI. MDXI themselves are a regional carrier since they have connectivity into some of the neighboring countries, but we're also looking for multiple carriers that can get us access to other regions, so that local partners in other regions can access and make use of the content that we can provide, which is unique for West Africa. Those are companies such as Angola Cables, but there's many more, PCW, and I said MDXI with the current connectivity that they have already. Then thirdly, and this may be an interesting point, we are very much open to work with local internet exchanges, because if we can make, as AMS-IX, if we can make our content available to local markets through local internet exchanges, that means that the local ISPs, the local eyeballs, will benefit from lower cost, high quality. It may mean that we will generate a little bit less revenue as a company, but we will develop internet exchanges in local countries. We honestly believe that cooperation, that aggregation of demand will drive our business kind of like a cauliflower, where once content providers will move locally, and possibly Ben can say something about it later on. They probably have plans to move into local countries, which means we may lose some content providers which may be unique today to the region, which may not be unique to all the countries anymore going forward. But we will, as an internet exchange, as the international internet exchange, we will focus on bringing on new content, so that this whole ecosystem keeps rolling. So really, this is how we look at the world. We want to cooperate. We want to collaborate in a cooperative manner to attract more content, which will serve the whole region better, and with that contribute to a better internet, and with that to a better society. So if you want to be part of that, we'd like to welcome you on board. This is what it more or less looks like today. This is obviously an ever-changing snapshot, but it gives you an indication of the 20 plus ISPs that we currently have connected, some of the content providers that we have on board, some of the content providers we're talking to. We have a long list of partners with whom we have an international relationship, who are reaching out to today. So this is what it looks like, and hopefully we can mutually get this this map to be growing darker and darker, better coverage, more content, and with that better internet. So again, if you want to be part of that journey, please feel free to reach out either to me, to myself, at Wouter Ensing at AMS-IX.net, or to our MDXI team at AMS-IX Lagos at mdxi.com. That's it from me, Ayamida. Back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Wouter. That was very engaging. Just 3 points from your keynote speech. There's lack of content regionally and locally, which creates unnecessary costs and latency, amongst other things. Also, extending reach to attract networks enables demand aggregation and also attracts more content, which creates a better internet across West Africa, and in turn attracts more eyeballs, who again attract more content. It's like a revolver. And finally, a cooperative approach, working with local partners who understand the mechanism of interaction in their local domain, is the way forward to connecting the whole of West Africa. Thank you very much, Wouter. Now we're going to move on to our panel session, which is going to be moderated by Oluwasayo Oshadami, with 2 esteemed panelists, Kendall Ananyi and Ben Nicklin. Now to a quick short bio on all 3. Oluwasayo Oshadami is the General Manager, Technical Solutions and Managed Services at MainOne, an Equinix company. He's been with MainOne for over 12 years and is responsible for product development, commercial solutions, design architecture, and project delivery at MainOne. It's a mouthful. Next, we have Kendall Ananyi. Kendall is the founder of Tizeti Networks, which operates as wifi.com.ng. Wifi.com.ng is an internet provider operating in Africa. They are leveraging solar panels to create low OPEX, CAPEX networks of owned and operated towers to offer disruptive, customer-friendly pricing for unlimited internet. Kendall has over 20 years experience in the telecoms and IT space. And finally, we have Ben Nicklin. Ben Nicklin is a director of network strategy and interconnection at Edgio. He joined the IT and telecoms industry almost 30 years ago and is responsible for the combined global footprint of Edgio, which is a merger between Limelight and Edgecast. Now over to you, Shaya. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good morning, Ayomide, and thank you very much for that great introduction. So Ben and Kendall, it's great to have both of you on the panel today, as well. Looking forward to the insight that both of you will be sharing with us regarding your industry experience. Ben is the Director of Networks and Strategy for Edgio, while Kendall is the MDC of Tizeti, a Wi-Fi company, like Ayomide said, who started operation in Lagos and now has presence in 3 West African countries. You're welcome, Ken.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Ben.
Hi, everyone.
All right. So we know that the ecosystem in West Africa continues to grow. New cables are being built, new data centers are being constructed, and we have the entrance of more content players in our market. And in addition to the exchange that we have that provides the enabling environment for this content to continue to grow. Our webinar this morning, Driving Content Growth in West Africa, we touch on some of those drivers that enables content to growth in addition to the industry experience and takeaway we'll be learning from the likes of Ben and Kendall. I'd like to start with you, Kendall. You have presence in 3 countries in West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire. What has been the impact of your connection to a West African focused internet exchange like AMS-IX in terms of network performance and service distribution?
Oh, it's been really great. I think it's one of the best things that has happened to the industry in the last decade. We started business 11 years ago. And when we started business, IP transit was the most expensive component of our business. And thankfully, with cables like MainOne's cable, that disrupted that whole barrier to providing internet. And so we took advantage of availability of those cables and were able to deliver unlimited internet, which is something that wasn't available as widely or even as or affordable. And so with that aspect of delivery of IP transit, the cost started declining, but not enough. Then right around the pandemic, right, where we saw an explosion of internet usage in 2020, what would have been a significant increase in the cost of transit to internet providers like us to be able to meet the demands of our customers, MDXI, we moved to MDXI at that point in our history, and we're able to meet the demands of our customer without actually needing to increase the capacity of IP transit we had. And so there was a significant, when you look at the cost of transit and interconnection, overall, there was significant cost savings for an ISP of our size. And over time, what we've seen in the last 3 years, we now have seen that we now have more traffic going through the exchange versus over the cable on IP transit. So that's significant. To put it in perspective, almost 60% of our traffic now is through an exchange, and that's significant cost savings. And obviously, even the capacity too, because you can have 10 gig, multiple 10 gig connections, and even we're approaching where we would even need a 100 gig connection too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken, for that wonderful insight regarding your own experience. Ben, you heard from Ken regarding his own experience, right? He's been able to reduce cost of transit, and that enabled him to save some money. I mean, and saving money is king. How has local internet exchange contributed to better distribution of your content in West Africa?
So from a content point of view, the key thing for us is that our main drive is to always peer where we can. Peering, whilst it's not always, especially with the reduction in IP transit costs these days, is not always the cheapest method, but it's the most reliable method. Because with transit, you have no control over latency, whereas with peering, it has a known factor, which obviously when you're delivering live streaming content or large file updates, which is what we do, that's a very, very key factor. We have to have that performance level and that guaranteed performance.
Thank you very much, Ben. So another perspective in terms of performance, guaranteed performance, connecting to the exchange. Ben, I have another question for you. So what attracted you to the West African market?
So Africa was a key market, or a new expanding market for us. Likewise, I think this harks back to Wouter's first slide in terms of how content providers have actually deployed into the region. So initially we were serving Africa as a continent from Europe. And then naturally, the first point of call we built into was Johannesburg. Now that's great. It serves a very large market, but it doesn't serve the smaller markets and the more regional markets. So again, our next hub after that, which I think went live approximately about 3 years ago, was Lagos. Because again, if we look at the continent as a whole, that is the next largest emerging market in terms of users, in terms of population, in terms of cable landing. That's the next logical step.
All right. So how has it been for you in terms of traffic growth, network performance, and user experience setting up this POP in West Africa today? So
performance has increased. Traffic has increased, maybe not as much as the senior management might like, but it has increased. The key factors is always the bit we've been missing, which is what I'm hoping certainly that with the AMS-IX introduction is going to be coming in, is the more regional perspective. So within Nigeria, we serve about 95% of all of our Nigerian based providers from that POP in Nigeria, with only a small regional coming from outside. Now, what we're missing is the ability to serve, again, via peering, the likes of Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and the various other surrounding countries. That's what's been missing. And that's what I'm hoping with the AMS-IX introduction of trying to bring in maybe more regional providers in. That's the key factor. Thank you very much, Ben, for that insight. And I'm sure that's the goal of AMS-IX, to bring that unique pairs into the Lagos hub so that the content distribution across the region will become more evenly distributed. And now to you, Kendall. Tizeti is connected to several content delivery networks in the data center that you're located at. That's the MDXI facility in Lagos. In your perspective, how has the growth of content hosting in data center in West Africa enable you to improve internet experience for your customers?
Okay, main thing is, so I talked about cost savings, which we pass to the customer, but again, customer, they're paying for experience, right? They want a great internet experience, right? And so even if you provide cheaper, affordable, unlimited internet, and they don't have a great experience, then you haven't really quite achieved your objective. It's not a win-win solution. So one of the things we've gained is latency, right? And which makes it a no-brainer, right? When the content is sitting locally at NDXI, the users are not accessing the content all the way across the cable with 100 millisecond latency. The content is right there for them to access it. And so when you're accessing things like, to put it in perspective, like Netflix or a video on YouTube, it's much better when you're streaming it from within MDXI versus going over a submarine cable. So the latency experience has been good. And one of the also good things, which is not obvious, right, but for an internet provider like us and our specific situation in Nigeria is uptime too, right? Because previously, when there's like a submarine cable cut or there's downtime from when we're hosting our own NOC within our own facility, right? We didn't have that advantage. But with going to with moving all of our stuff, our infra to MDXI, we have significantly improved uptime. And then there's something I like about the internet exchange, right, which is now AMS-IX, right, is discovery of content. So the folks that handle it in the organization, they're proactive. So whenever there's a new content provider, they actually email us and inform us that, oh, you have access to this content. You can pair with this provider, which I think is very good. Very, very rare you see that kind of proactive service delivery across the industry. So that's really good, right? I know when Limelight connected to us, we're not even aware Limelight was available, which is something you don't have to do. So for a content provider coming into AMS-IX, it's kind of that discovery of the content is also important, because one thing for you to be available, another thing for you to peer with the local internet provider. So I think that's something I've not seen across widely across multiple regions that we have. But it's great. I've had the best experience working with you.
Thank you very much, Ken, for bringing that insight once more. So Ben, you heard from Ken. He's excited pairing with the likes of Limelight, formerly Limelight, but now Edgio. So how has your acquisition of the Edcast been, and will it influence your investment in West Africa?
It's certainly been challenging. It's been a very interesting last year. From our point of view, at the moment, it hasn't really affected it, because we're still going through the amalgamation of how do we operate, because they're two slightly different platforms. So the traditional Limelight was very much large object. So we have large scale video, large downloads. The Edgecast network was traditionally more small object. So the two don't marry up that easily. So we're still kind of working out how do we deploy that. So at this moment, Edgecast content is not currently available in Lagos, but the legacy Limelight one is. At some stage, once we go through the technical piece of it, yes, we will then bring both sets of content to be available within that exchange. And that will obviously increase then the traffic further.
All right, thank you very much. So we're all excited. It means there's more to come. Ken, I mean, you can hear from Ben himself. So it tells you that more content are coming and your existing peers will grow. And user experience for your customers also will significantly improve. Now that you heard from Ben, now that you heard from Ben regarding more content that will come after the consolidation of the acquisition of Edgecast, it means that more content will grow. I have another question for you, Kendall. Being that you've heard from Ben, more content are coming, it tells us that the internet interconnection and penetration will continue to grow in our content. Are there any other driving factor that you think will enhance internet penetration in West Africa?
Oh, sure. So you can never, the closer you can get to the customer, right? As a last mile provider, the better the experience. So we've moved content from across the submarine cable into MDXI data center. Obviously, where we're seeing a huge amount of growth within the continent is in what we're calling second tier, third tier cities. So first tier city, for example, in Nigeria will be Lagos, but second tier will be Abuja, PH, and all the other states from there. So one of the things that would really significantly improve is more landing points across the continent to take traffic from those major locations into those secondary cities. And I know there's a lot of work happening in the background on that, and even inland within the region itself. And so backhaul to other states, some of the smaller states, like stuff we partnered with MainOne, Edo, right, Ogun, right. So that having those kind of connections, right, where you can then access the content to other locations where we're seeing significant growth, where even the population growth that we talked about, having the youngest population is where we're seeing significant need for our service. For example, earlier this year, we announced that we're going to 10 more states beyond the 5 states we're in. And I know the other large internet companies, they've landed cables in Nigeria, looking at landing cables in the south region of Nigeria. Those kind of things, and establishing more data centers outside of Lagos would significantly improve internet access. So, for example, having the same kind of wishful thinking, same kind of, so even if it's a smaller subset of MDXI in a place like Port Harcourt or somewhere in Abuja or Kano, where make it more geographically dispersed and bringing more edge content to those locations, right, with the Edgio folks, that would improve both internet experience and also reduce the cost, because as you can imagine, in those smaller states, disposable income is not as great. And so there's even more need for people like internet providers like us to further reduce the cost of delivering internet to those customers.
Thank you very much, Ken. And I'm sure other operators, industry experts, and investors are all listening to you. So I'm sure you'll be excited about investing in all of those smaller markets, so we can open up those markets and populations so they can have access to more affordable internet. Ben, I have a question for you, because from your bio, it shows that you have deployed your infrastructure in several markets. From your experience, what are some of the challenges and opportunities that you think will help in driving content growth in West Africa?
So West Africa, or Africa as a whole, certainly West Africa, from my experience, is certainly a lot easier to work in than some other regions. So there are certain markets within Asia and certainly the Middle East, which are intrinsically harder because there is no carrier neutrality. If you needed to work with a particular provider, you have to deploy within that provider. There is no choice. There is no other option about it. What AMS-IX and MDXI have achieved is by creating that carrier neutrality. It means that I can build a single node, which then will connect to multiple providers, and therefore, in terms of bang for my buck, in terms of my investment, gives me more ability to connect to those. With any market such as this, I mean, the providers will use it, and one of my team uses it a lot. We use the term ecosystem, because there has to be that ecosystem. You have to get that whole balance of getting the content providers there, attracting the eyeball networks. And it's a little bit of a catch-22, because without the eyeballs, you can't attract content. Without the content, you can't attract the eyeballs. So you have to try and find a way to manage that and get and balance that and bring both together. And that's a challenge that AMS-IX have done very well over many years. And I mean, I've worked with them for the last 12 years. I've been doing peering.
Thank you very much, Ben. And it shows the role that being neutral in a market plays in enabling content distribution, from what you've said, operating in the Lagos MDXI facility. Mr. Ken, I have a question for you. In what ways do you think the government, for example, or maybe the regulatory bodies, can encourage the development of content and also network providers to grow this content in West Africa?
Great. We've seen over the last 5 years, we've seen how the technology startup industry has grown, and which MainOne was one of the foundation on which all of that was built. Once you ran your cable to Yaba, and that seeded a lot of startups. And over the last couple of years, we've had it's almost billions of dollars that have gone into investing in those startups over the last 6 years at least, right? And so those startups are generating content, even if it's transactions, whatever kind of information is being passed around between them and their customers. And most of this traffic is actually sitting in servers outside of the country, right? And this is content that could actually be local, and the latency of accessing those content to the customers would be a lot better if those contents were brought in locally. So there are things that the regulators can do and mandate, right, to ensure that those servers can come home and sit locally, right? And there's savings, right? If we're having a server locally in local currency versus accessing it for paying for those kind of servers outside of the country in foreign exchange, right? We know how the foreign exchange issue in Nigeria is, but having those content here, it's a no-brainer. The content is available to you're being billed in local currency, and obviously the latency to your customer is a lot less. So there's no reason why your content shouldn't even be local if you're a CTO of any of the companies on this webinar. And so those are some of the things I know. The central bank has mandated things that you should have a local server if you're a fintech startup. And then even on the Nollywood side, right? Look at how our content have exploded around the world. You see Amazon Prime here, you see Netflix sponsoring local content here, and those movies. Look, well, for those large companies, most of them have the content here. But even as a smaller player who is a small studio having a movie release, right? Those content should be streamed locally here because Nollywood is big, right? And same thing, it also helps on the other way. The stuff we can also export too. So where our content should be local, while people are accessing that content from outside the world, right? That's some kind of export too, right? And so in that scenario, our cable is now sending content the other way because it's local from here too, and generating revenue for the transit providers too. And so with that industry trying to mandate things happening locally, with the amount of content that they're generating, between that and the regulators trying to ensure that the startups that they work with are taking advantage of data centers and there are quite a number right now, right? We should see that I think is the government's role in all of that, providing that platform for that to happen. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ken, for that very insightful point. And I'm sure Ben will have something to say about that regarding the role of government and regulatory bodies. Ben, what's your view on that? I mean, given that you have other operational experience, I mean, in Europe, so you know how government and regulatory bodies support content and network providers. Well, what's your own?
So Africa is actually probably one of the better ones for that, because again, across Europe, the government doesn't typically get to, or government regulatory doesn't typically get too involved anymore, because those markets have been fairly well established, same across the US. Middle East, we have had some experience where, the TRA, for instance, working with UAIX, have actually built and worked with a number of different providers to try and bring that together, which to some limited success, because unfortunately the providers don't work well together. I think in Africa, there has been probably more positive impact from the government actually getting involved and actually trying to assist those markets to grow and actually seeing that there is benefit to their populations rather than just simple profitability.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben, for that insight. I'd like to thank the both of you for your great contribution. I think we're coming to the end of the panel session. And any closing remark, starting with Ben?
I think the main thing for us is that simply reach out to us. We don't automate our emails and things yet. So if you reach out to my peering team and ask for peering, you will actually get a human being on the other end of it who will take a look at it. And whilst we do technically have a peering policy, that gets a little bit bent when we have emerging markets. So don't just read the word for word. Actually reach out and ask. We typically do not use root servers, so you won't automatically just pick us up. So you will need to actually reach out and just set up BGP sessions with us.
Thank you very much, Ben. Ken, closing remarks from you, any?
Oh, same, just to all the internet providers, this is something you should take advantage of. I know a lot of folks who are stuck in our ways thinking about transit, trying to buy more transit, but we can actually have significant cost savings and also improved performance by peering at AMS-IX. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you very much to our guests who joined the panel session to listen to both Ken and Ben from their industry experience. If you would like to benefit from the ecosystem that has been built by both MDXI and AMS-IX, you can contact us through the email on the chat box, m6lagos@mdxi.com. Now back to you, Ayomide.
Wow, what a fantastic panel session. I didn't want it to end, but obviously we're short and pressed for time. We have a few questions. I think we have 5 minutes for questions. I have one for Wouter, actually. It says, hello, Wouter. For the other countries, regions you operate in, what are the usual drivers for content growth and why?
Yeah, well, interestingly, that depends a bit. As I showed in the presentation, there's kind of the logical phases that content distribution go through, and I think it's fair to say that Europe and the US are probably furthest ahead in this curve, then Asia, then probably Latin America, and then well, the Middle East, North Africa, and Africa region behind that. So really per continent or per region, it varies. It varies much on where content providers are, I guess, in that curve.
Okay, so it's safe to say that the answer is subjective, depending on the region. I have one question for Ben. Actually, dear participants, if you have questions, you can drop them using the Q&A box. We'll take one or two for the participants. I have one for Ben. It says, hi Ben, what kind of content does Edgio provide to end users in Africa? So I'm not sure if they want to know Edgecast and Limelight, which is different, or they're asking for the combined kind of content that Edgio is providing to users in Africa. So
the simple answer at the moment, it's traditionally large scale video events. So we have a lot of large sports events that get streamed, not so much into Africa, but certainly to other regions. We have a lot of those. The major one we actually see into Africa are actually the large scale downloads. So this is PlayStation and Xbox downloading. So those are typically the biggest spikes that we see. Okay,
thank you, Ben. I have one for Tizeti, for Kendall. It says Tizeti has established presence in Ghana, Nigeria, CIV. Do you have any plans to expand to other countries?
Oh, sure. So we're focused on West Africa. So we've done surveys, market entry, research analysis of additional countries. The most near-term ones are Togo for us, and also Liberia. And we're always open to partner with even other ISPs in form of investments or partnerships. So yes, our focus is on West Africa. And as quickly as we can get to every single country, we'll try to get there.
Okay, thank you very much, Kendall. Do we have any more questions? I think there's one here for Wouter. Okay, I'm just trying to go through them because we're pressed for time. What is AMS-IX Lagos' role in the West Africa digital ecosystem?
Well, I would like to hope we are a facilitator. You know, we didn't establish a new IX. We partnered with MDXI, you know, and essentially took the West Africa internet exchange, which was already established, and trying to build it out. And you know, I guess the point of our, you know, our story for West Africa is really that we want to cooperate with other partners. You know, if we look at what we're good at, it's international partnerships, such as with Edgio, but also quite a few others. And our ability to bring them to the region is the value we can add. You know, operating the technology of an internet exchange, we don't necessarily do you know, 10 times better than a local partner. Doing business locally, I mean, we didn't go to school in the region. I mean, we don't know the local way of doing business, so we're definitely not better at that. So really, you know, kind of humbly, we're trying to add value by bringing in content, and that's why that's so much our focus, and that's why the cooperation with local partners is so much our on our radar, rather than, you know, do it ourselves, conquer the world, because this is not about conquering the world. This is about working together, making the internet better in the region. And you know, I guess there's a lot to gain, and that makes it kind of rewarding to be able to do this together.
Thank you, Wouter. Maybe we'll conquer the world in the process. Just a joke. Shaya, I think I have a similar question for MDXI. Would you be able to answer that? So what is MDXI role in the West Africa digital ecosystem when it comes to internet exchange connections?
I mean, just like Wouter said, our role is to facilitate and provide that platform for the likes of the internet exchanges and also the content providers and the networks to build that infrastructure where they can bring all of their services and aggregate and interconnect with each other. As you know, we have data center in Lagos. We're still building more data center. The rollout plan to expand our facility. There's also a data center in Apollonia in Ghana. We have a data center in VT in Abidjan, and there are plans to grow this footprint so we can enable the infrastructure and provide the likes of Edgio, more content players, a platform to host their infrastructure. And with the likes of AMS-IX, work with them to provide that interconnect across West Africa, enabling the likes of Tizeti to expand into all of this market, leveraging this infrastructure that we've set and the partnership that we've also established with networks across this market and all the content players that we're aggregating in our infrastructure. I think that's the role that we play. We're more of an enabler, bringing the content players together, the exchange, the networks, providing that platform where they come and interconnect and exchange traffic.
Thank you, Shaya. So AMS-IX is a facilitator, MDXI is an enabler. I think that's a good summary. I have one question here for Ken. It says, hi, Ken. What type of traffic/content growth trends are you seeing in the market in the last few years? And does adverse economic situations impact negatively on content growth?
So like I previously said, the more traffic that we have local, the better for us. So even if there's traffic growth, it's pretty much the same cost, irrespective of the capacity that we need. And so we would like more content because for us, it doesn't factor into the cost. What actually drives the cost that we deliver, the cost of us delivering service to our customers with how much we're spending on IP transit, because that's significantly more, right? And so this helps overall reduce our cost, which we then transfer those cost savings to our customer, right? And in terms of what we're seeing growing, there's a lot of video content in being that we started off as a residential ISP. Might be different if you're serving a lot more enterprises, but we're seeing, because people are also working from home, so we're seeing a lot more traffic on things like the pairing we have with Microsoft, right? Because there's people doing Teams from when working from home, right? And that's obviously when you're doing a video call, that consumes more bandwidth. But also you've seen on the residential side, people are doing a lot of Netflix streaming in off-peak and at night too, right? On the weekends too. We see a lot of YouTube. YouTube is huge, right? If the kids, even regular folks, right? So we're seeing a lot more video content. That's the biggest driver. Then in terms of specific companies, Facebook traffic, we're Meta, the group of Meta, because of their family of apps, right? There's nothing you're doing in Africa where you don't wake up and either check your Facebook, or if it's Instagram, if you're an Instagram person, or even if it's a WhatsApp call, if you're calling people, there's a lot. So all of the things you're seeing with not as many voice traffic, not growing as much, or being declining. In fact, you're seeing that in the form of WhatsApp traffic growing. So Facebook is one of, in terms of the big, FANG or MAGA or whatever, the big tech companies, Facebook's traffic is huge. And all of that, for someone as an internet provider like us, having connecting at MDXI, all of that traffic is free in quotes because we can access it over peering, versus in the past when I told you about 11 years ago, all of that traffic was going through IP transit. Okay, thank you. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you, Kendall. Just to summarize, it's a shift from voice to video, and the video is released on social media and content as video, video streaming, music streaming, and social media, thanks to the likes of Meta, etc. Thank you for that response. We have a question in the chat box from Hicham. Hicham is joining us from Mali, and his question is, what is planned by AMS-IX to expand the reach of content and interconnection to countries which have no access to submarine cable, so landlocked countries like Mali, for example?
Yeah, well, if I understand the question correctly, you know, it's about what we're trying to do to make, you know, that content available in well, in countries which do not have access to those subsea cables today. You know, and I think it goes a bit broader than just the countries that don't have these subsea cables. Really, what we're trying to do is build a network with carriers of multiple entries into all the regions, ideally also with other internet exchanges, to make that content available in multiple places, because multiple routes, multiple places, and that also goes for us, means there's choice, which brings down cost, which brings down price, which brings up possibilities, opportunities, because it's available via multiple routes, and that brings up user experience and security, as Ben said. You know, having the security that the reliability of the delivery of content is key. So building multiple routes into actually all locations, into all regions around us, is I guess what we're trying to achieve, to pump up the availability of the content. And again, that content will move locally over time. So you know, the first movers, such as Edgio, will be the first ones to, you know, to also move to countries like Mali, for example. You know, and then on the long tail, we will look at additional content, trying to attract it to the region for the ones that are moving slightly slower than the likes of Edgio.
Thank you for that, Wouter.
Addresses the question.
Yes, thank you, Wouter. We have only 4 minutes left and we want to be prompt. So to close, I'm going to anchor onto what Ben said about this being a catch-22. You know, content trying to get to the eyeballs and eyeballs trying to get to the content. So AMS-IX Lagos has a very vital role to play in the West African region. So we've had a very packed session. It went really well. Our focus is on decentralization and bringing the content closer to the eyeballs. I want to thank Wouter for that insightful keynote speech. And I want to thank the panel session, which was complimentary and amazing. I also want to thank all our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here with us today. Thank you, Ben, for coming, and thank you, Kendall, for being here. Kendall from Tizeti and Ben from Edgio. I also want to thank our superb moderator, Shaya, for holding that conversation. Thank you, you were very insightful and you drove the conversation really excellently. Finally, I want to thank our fantastic panelists who came with energy, giving us questions and engaging in the chat. This has been phenomenal. It's been about 57 minutes and we're going to end on time. But before we go, I want to use this opportunity to again invite all our participants to the African Peering and Interconnection Forum holding in Ghana. You can register to join virtually or in person. The link is in the chat box. Let's continue this conversation offline. If you're interested in any of our various amazing services that we offer, please send an email to info@mdxi.com or amsixlagos@mdx-i.net. It's also in the chat box. So it is now 11:58 a.m. West African time on Wednesday, the 26th of July. And I want to thank you all for joining us. I've been your anchor for the last 59 minutes. My name is Ayomide Jones, and it's bye for now. Thank you all.